Hi, my name is Phil Craig, and I am the leader of the Referendum Party. It's great to join you again today and to sort of start to bring everybody up to speed with what's happening with our new party. Here we are in our first full week. It's been an interesting time. We're busy trying to get all of the sort of structures and important parts of the infrastructure of the organisation together. Obviously, we've done most of the work beforehand, but now we're in the live environment and things work a little bit differently. But it's really an exciting time to be part of this. And for those that don't know, who perhaps have not been involved in the Cape Independence movement yet, really, it's just an organisation of people who passionately want to save this country and who want to make a real difference and to create a future that we can all be proud of. And sometimes that makes for interesting times because we're not career politicians. We don't know how to run a political party, but actually our passion and leads us to go on, and we end up doing quite extraordinary things, often things that people think weren't possible or say wasn't possible. And let's hope that the Referendum Party is really going to break the mould and in 2024 deliver the 100,000 votes, which would be a spectacular result that will make sure that we get Cape Independence, or a referendum in Cape Independence, of which Cape Independence will inevitably follow. Now, I'm just going to try and invite my colleague, Renee, to join us. There we go. So I'm just adding Renee now, and I'm going to have to adjust our screens to actually see my less than attractive face, and Renee's considerably more attractive one, which I think will come on the screen beneath me. So I'm just going to try and adjust now to make sure that we get that properly. Okay, I think we are here, and you can see if it was Beauty and the Beast, I'm not the Beauty.
You are too kind.
But I have other skills, I hope. Hi Renee, how are you?
Morning, Phil. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
I'm good.
Good. Right, over to you. Take it away.
Good morning again, as I just said, to everybody who is joining us here this morning. My name is Dr. Renee Pretorius from the CIAG, and with me here we have Phil Craig, the co-founder of the CIAG, and also the leader of the newly formed Referendum Party. So, due to the many questions that we received after the launch, we thought it would be a good idea to have these Q&A sessions where Phil can reply to some of these frequently asked questions. And so just like last night with our Q&A, people are more than welcome to ask their questions in the comments below. So in the meanwhile, Phil, while we wait for people to ask their questions, I'll be asking you a few questions that I know are the questions that actually come to the fore quite often. So the first one is, what brought you to this point? Because yes, that's fine.
Sorry, Ben, 1 second. Right, Robert's just shouting at me that there's something wrong with the screen. Pardon? Okay, that's fine. We can adjust that.
There we go.
Thank you. Now, what I see isn't what you see, so it causes a little bit of complication. Right, before I'm going to come to your question in a minute, but I see the first comment on my screen is a great one from Charles Engelbrecht. So thank you, Charles. And he's saying independence is the only way to avoid destruction. You have to be an idiot not to see that. I could not possibly agree more. Exactly our sentiment. We just have to get this thing done. So here we go. Right, Renee, over to you. Your first question.
No, the first question was about what brought you to this point, because the viewers might remember that the CIAG in particular never really wanted to make people choose between their political party and Cape Independence. And so therefore my question is, what brought you to this point?
No, thank you. Okay, no, that's a great question. So, look, I guess the answer is we explored every other option. So, the CIAG, as you know, because you founded it with me, that was a political pressure group, continues to be a political pressure group, and its role is to put pressure on political parties and work together with other organisations pushing for Cape Independence to deliver it. And as you know, Cape Exit have got 1 in 4 Western Cape voters on their database saying they want Cape Independence. We've marched in Stellenbosch, we've marched in Cape Town, we've delivered petitions to Premier Windey. We got as far as agreeing with the DA and them promising that they would bring this referendum, but obviously ultimately then they reneged and didn't keep that promise. And effectively, we just kind of ran out of options. We tried all of the negotiations, we tried all of the first steps, if you like. We've ended up in this situation where
for not necessarily malicious reasons. Often people sort of think, where are the DA? Why are they like this? And I think, we have to remember that the DA are the political status quo there in the Western Cape. They are the establishment. And the establishment rarely pushes for change of the establishment. And I think that's where we are. So, we need to push them a bit further. And ultimately, we've got to the point where we can't negotiate this. We've negotiated once and before one election, and then after the election they broke their promise. It would be totally pointless to go into another election and try and make the same agreement with no guarantee that they wouldn't do the same. Every likelihood they would. So we've taken on this task. It's a monumental task, but it's got to be done. And let's hope that people rally behind us, and collectively, as a group of people, as the Western Cape people, we could deliver this radical and fundamental change that's going to give us, not just the future that we want, but a future for the generations that come after. We create this first world country in Africa. We fulfill the amazing potential that we know that this part of the world has got, and we'll know we've got it right when actually the people who are leaving because they don't see a future start coming back because actually this is their home. So that's our job is we've got to that point where we've got no other choice.
Yes. It's been a long road. We didn't get here soon, quick. Okay, so you've already touched on this, but many people would say there are so many political parties already. Wouldn't this just make it more difficult for the public come election day in 2024?
Sure, and look, I get it. It is difficult. There are lots of political parties. Everybody groans when the next one comes along. But actually, what do you do if there isn't a political party that's standing for exactly what you want to do? We're a single issue political party. We want a referendum on Cape independence. And nobody was standing for what we wanted to stand, and perhaps that's a good time to explain what we stand for, because many people say, well, what about the Freedom Front Plus? They support Cape independence. And what about the Cape Independence Party? They support Cape independence. There are other parties. So I think it's just important to understand, at the CIAG, we did an awful lot of research to understand the Cape independence environment. Who is it that supports Cape independence? Why do they support Cape independence? Who do they vote for? What do they want? And the reality is that 7 out of 10 Cape independence supporters vote DA, and 3 out of 10 Cape independence supporters vote for other parties. And the 3 out of 10 independent supporters who don't want to have a DA government are actually pretty well represented. They can vote for the Freedom Front Plus, and they can vote for the Cape Independence Party, who both have a very distinct proposition. But what about the 70% of people who want a DA government? And actually, we know from doing focus groups that people feel strongly in favour of a DA government. And whether that's right or wrong, we're apolitical at the CIG, as you know, Renee. We voted for all manner of parties, but we don't have the same political views. We just all agree that we need to make decisions for ourselves. So we have this selection of 7 out of 10 Western Cape voters who support Cape independence and want a DA government. And who are they going to vote for? And from the focus groups, they recognise, or they feel, that the DA is the best vehicle for their present. Right now, the DA manager, we hear it time and time again in focus groups, it's better here than the rest of the country. It's not perfect, but as soon as you go to Johannesburg or Durban, you can see what it's like. If our pipe bursts, somebody fixes it. If our street light, and actually they feel that they're well served by a DA government. They don't want to be rid of the DA government. They want to keep the DA government. In fact, they're terrified of the DA government being voted out of power, and by some means that the ANC would come back into power, and that's their primary fear. And unfortunately, voting for the Freedom Front Plus or voting for the Cape Independence Party then plays into those fears, because actually what they want is a DA government, but they also want Cape independence. So actually we said, well, that's fine. We can work alongside those other parties. Let's create a party for those voters, for that 70% of Cape independence supporters who want a DA government, but actually want Cape independence. And effectively, that is the proposition of the Referendum Party. It's okay, here you go, we hear you. You want a DA government. We will irrevocably promise that we will vote with the DA to make sure that you have a DA government after 2024. So you don't need to worry about the ANC coming back. You don't need to worry about the DA not. You don't need to worry that the DA isn't going to come and fix your pipes, because it'll be the same government, and voting for the Referendum Party is just as good as voting for the DA, because you're going to end up with the same government. But we're going to add something else into the equation. As well as giving you a DA government, we are also going to give you a referendum on Cape independence, and that's our proposition. So what is the difference between us and those parties is we are a home for people who want to have a DA government, and therefore we can give you that promise that you'll get your DA government, so we're a safe vote. You haven't got to fear about that, so now you can vote for, let's think of that as your present. That secures your present, the known quantity, the government that you want. But actually, you can also vote for your future. And what we also found in our focus groups, quite interestingly, is ask people what country they want to live in. Ask DA voters to describe the country they want to live in. They describe it. It's a first world country. Ask them, will the DA get them there? They say no. They recognise that the DA just doesn't have the power within South Africa to ever deliver the future they want. And that's why we need Cape independence. That's why we need to vote for the referendum party, because actually we're giving people access to the future that they actually want. So there you go. Long answer, but there's the answer.
You just referred to the future that they want. So on your social media platforms, there's often this reference to two different futures. Can you maybe just explain what these two different futures are that you're talking about, and also why they're significant?
Sure. Look, right, and look, that's one of the sort of, we've sort of tried to frame our messaging in relatively simple terms that are easy for people to understand, and hopefully they can connect with. And one of these is to say, look, in 2024, you'll be voting for one of two futures. What are those futures? One of those futures is a failed state. And what we've said is to people, look, yeah, I think the Western Cape has worked out that if it votes for the ANC, it's going to live in a failed state. So that's easy. We worked that part out. What people haven't necessarily worked out is that if they vote for the DA, they're still going to end up in a failed state. It'll take a little bit longer. And the reason for that is not necessarily that the DA going to do a bad job of running the Western Cape. But actually, in most cases, they're just not going to be running the Western Cape at all. They don't have control of policing. They don't have control of economic policy. They can't control the borders. They don't have control of tax money. There's so many things that they just cannot do, because ultimately, you know, in our current system, if you vote for a DA government, you're going to end up with all of the decisions being made in Pretoria, almost all of the decisions. And therefore, those critical things we're talking about, economic policy, policing and so on, will actually be determined from the government that you rejected, not the one that you voted for. And ultimately, the ANC are going to be in charge in the Western Cape, just the same as they are in South Africa. And when South Africa fails because the ANC are useless, the Western Cape will fail because the ANC are useless, because we're using the same policies in both parts. The DA will hold on a little bit longer and sort of try to fight off the worst of it, but they can't avoid the inevitable. So that's the one future, the failed state. And the other future is a first world future. Yeah, we can build this first world country. What do we mean by first world? We mean a place that's safe, where law and order matters, where there are proper borders, and we can determine who comes and who doesn't come. People don't just get to erect shacks wherever they want and to impose themselves on the people around them. You know, a place where we set sensible economic policies, where that creates jobs, it creates an environment where businesses want to invest here, people want to come back, it brings money in, and all of those things, and that money turns into taxation. We then improve the health system, we improve the school system, we improve the roads, ultimately we lift people out of poverty, and here we are 10, 15, 20 years down the line, and we have this first world country with first world facilities. And you have anybody that says, hey, you know what, that's not possible. There are many examples where it is possible, but probably one of the ones that's most relevant to us is Singapore. And that, you know, in Singapore we've got this country that you know, seceded from Malaysia, had these three ethnic groups, was in a swamp. You know, it was relatively poor, and then suddenly, by pursuing these really sensible policies, we've been able to become one of the most successful and prosperous countries in the world. And actually, you know, Singapore hasn't got half of the potential of the Western Cape. You know, we've got a sea route, we've got this incredible people who are really resourceful, talented. We've got this wonderful history. You know, it's one of the floral kingdoms of the world. Everything. It's got so much going for us. We actually could knock it out of the park.
Thanks so much for that answer about the two futures. Okay, so now a few questions about referendums. Now, one question that many people have is, can the Premier of the Western Cape call a referendum or not? Because there are various answers out there on this topic.
Sure. Now, look, so short answer, yes, he can. Yes, he can. There is a longer answer, and I'll try to give some bits of that without going on too long, which is my problem, I know. So, but look, so the Constitution 1272F and the Western Cape has its own constitution, so 372F, both say that the Western Cape Premier has the authority to call provincial referendums. That's not in doubt. where it starts to get slightly complicated, and actually the Premier Windy is using this to avoid calling the referendum, is when you read that list, it says in accordance with national legislation. That doesn't mean that the national government must call the referendum. It just means that the national government must write the referendum legislation, the rules around calling referendums. And the rules are written. It's in something called the Referendums Act, the Referendum Act. But the Referendum Act is older than well, it was written before 1994. I think it was 1983 or 86, at a point when premiers didn't exist. So it doesn't make specific reference to the premier. And therefore you have this slight contradiction between the Constitution, which is supreme, and the law. So the Premier wants to change this law so that his right's clear. But actually, what they've done is, we worked with the DI on that legislation some time ago, and unfortunately, rather than push that legislation, which was the idea, the DI have just dragged their heels perpetually because they don't want it any pace at all, because they don't want to have to be forced to consult the Western Cape people on Cape independence, because they know what the outcome is going to be, and that's that the Western Cape is going to vote for Cape independence. So there's this argument, and actually that legislation is outdated. There was a very interesting article, maybe that's the best way to close it, in the Daily Friend by Martin van Staden last week, detailing exactly why the Western Cape Premier does have the right to call referendums here and now. Doesn't need to do anything else, absolutely has the right, and he can call a referendum if he wants to. And Martin, who's not a Cape Independence supporter, but he's a legal expert, said, look, the issue here is not a legal issue, it's that the Premier doesn't want to call a referendum on Cape Independence.
Sure. We've got a question here from Cherie van der Merwe, and her question is, what happens to the referendum party after the referendum?
Yeah, well, good question, Sharif. Maybe the better question is to say, if you don't mind rephrasing it, what happens to the referendum party after independence? Because there's going to be a process after the referendum, and we'll want to keep, we'll want to make sure that the referendum, if it's successful, follows through to actually Cape independence. But after that, it'll come to an end. We are a single issue party. Our job is to deliver power to the Western Cape people, and once we've delivered power to the Western Cape people, then we will have done our job. Now, whether individual members of the referendum party then go on to join other political parties or to pursue political careers, then that's up to them. They'll obviously have great political experience, and I'm sure will be very valuable. Personally, I have no political ambitions whatsoever, and I want to retire and go and write a book about the whole story. So spend some time with my family, who've seen precious little of me. What's our role? It's to deliver power to the Western Cape people, and when it's done, it's done. We're not after political power.
So what you're saying, in short, is that you didn't grow up aspiring to be a political leader one day.
No, I just had plenty to say for myself.
Okay. All right, then. People are sometimes confused in terms of who will be allowed to vote in the referendum and who will not be allowed to vote. Some people think everybody can vote. Others would say, no, that's not really the case. What's your answer?
So look, I could interpret that question two ways, but everybody, anybody on the Western Cape voters roll will be entitled to vote in a referendum. That's the reality. So if you're a registered voter in the Western Cape, you'll be able to vote in a referendum. Obviously, and if you are registered in the rest of the country, in other words, Western Cape isn't your home province, you won't be able to vote in a referendum. Rightly so, because Cape independence is about the self-determination of the Western Cape people. The Western Cape people deciding for themselves what it is that they want. So if you're not part of the Western Cape people, you don't get to say, because it's not you that's deciding. Yeah. In the negotiations that will follow, the interests of people in the rest of the country will obviously have to be taken into account, but you will not get a say on whether the Western Cape wants independence or not. That's our decision.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. Then Philip has a question. His question is, the referendum party, what will happen to all sports clubs in the Western Cape that are affiliated with the national bodies?
Well, I think that's something that we don't know yet. I mean, clearly the new country, the independent Western Cape, will create its own sports bodies, and I guess each of those bodies then will determine, what's the team going to be called, and how is it going to continue, and whether in fact there's going to be a continued collaboration with South Africa. People often about the Springboks, and that's always an interesting question. I mean, there are many examples of countries that collaborate, so who knows? There's a deep love of the Springboks, and many people are concerned that I'd love Cape independence, but what about my box? And I can't give an answer to that, unfortunately. But what I can do is point to examples around the world, and there are two actually which are probably useful. One would be the British Lions, which is where teams play together in a group, even though they come from different countries. And then, ironically, the other one is the Irish rugby team, which people may or may not know actually is two different countries: Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, which is a country that was once one and was split in two, continue to play rugby together as one rugby team because that's the way they wanted it. So who knows, all sorts of options. I think we've got to first and foremost put the people of the Western Cape first, make sure we get them jobs and houses and out of poverty, because that's our priority. But we understand that people love their sport, and we'll have to find solutions, and we'll find the solutions that suit us.
Thank you so much. Our time is almost up. Phil, maybe just in conclusion, maybe you can just share with the viewers or the people who are watching, if people are watching this and they really want to become involved with the Referendum Party or help in any way, what is it that people can do to help? What is it that you need? Well, how can people become involved?
So, look, great question. We absolutely need help. So if you're out there thinking, well, look, I could help, but what good would I be? We need you. You absolutely should come on board, help us. We need help in every possible way. It's a huge task building a political party. We have a very short period of time. Right from people who come work in the office, people to help us with fundraising, people to set up branches, people to write letters to the media for us, people to help run our social media accounts, people to do graphic design, people to knock door to door. There is just a vast amount, and actually for every shaped peg there's a hole. So please get involved. So start off by telling your friends, get them to follow us on social media, and let's build up the profile of this thing, and then contact us. And look, probably the easiest way is info@referendumparty.org. Just send us an email, tell us who you are, tell us what kind of thing you're roughly interested in doing, and then we'll get in touch and we'll put you in touch with the relevant person in the organisation, and we can take it from there. But everybody can play a role to help. It's a bit like a rugby team, I guess. All shapes and sizes is a position for everybody. So thank you, good question, and look, thanks for this session. It's been great.
Yeah, I think it's been really, really good. So I won't waste your time any longer, since you have so much work to do before the elections of next year. So all the best. And from our side, from the CIAG side, obviously we're thrilled about the Referendum Party in the political arena. And as we said last night, please share this video with your friends, people who need hope. Talk about it around the braai and everywhere that you are. Talk about Cape independence and share the hope of a future, not only for us, but also for our children and their children on the southern tip of Africa. All right, with that, I think we can conclude, Phil.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you for everybody that's joined us. Yeah, we really appreciate your time and helping us to spread this wonderful message. Thank you. Doesn't want to.